right behind me.
I've got one over here too. The wheel. The wheel halo.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got the notification of the recording being started?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So the recording has started. I'm going to make my exit and you can start from scratch by saying hello in the introduction and then Shibani will take over.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Have fun.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be doing this again today. Preeti Menon is on the other side, who is a seasoned educator with 30 years of teaching magic up her sleeve. Born in Kuwait, schooled in Kerala, and a classroom globetrotter, she's taught everywhere from Mumbai to Wellington, Kannur, and now calls Bangalore her home for the last 17 years. When she's not inspiring young minds, she's off exploring the great outdoors, bird watching, hiking, and discovering new corners of the world. Nature and travel are her jam, but teaching, that's her true superpower. Welcome, Preeti Menon. It's such a pleasure to be hosting you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talk to you.
Lovely. So, we're just going to deep dive directly into what I'm waiting to ask you.
Okay.
And my first question, therefore, is what's your most vivid memory from the first 12 years of your life?
Okay. So I was born and raised in Kuwait. So I did my schooling until I was in 12th grade. So that's a huge chunk of my life, formative years. So my vivid memories are coming to India and Kerala specifically for my summer vacation. That was my high point in my life. And just being in Kerala, coming from Kuwait, it's nice, it's dreary, it's a desert. It was, I mean, so many years ago. And this was from the time between June to August.
Mhm,
And that was the monsoons. That's the monsoons in Kerala. So
mhm.
this, just entering into this lush green world with rains and rains, it was just so magical. And the smell of the wet earth, it was so enchanting, really. So that's my very vivid memories. I
How
can't
beautiful
erase
is that? Yeah.
that.
Wow.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful place to live in, too. Uh,
Yeah.
so we all have a formative moment that sticks with us. Can
Mhm.
you share a memory from your childhood that you believe played a significant role in who you are today?
So my father used to, he would write plays, short plays, dramas, and of course he never published them, but it was just more of a hobby.
Ah,
But what he excelled in was writing these mono acts. I don't know why he thought, he would just ask me one day. He just asked me, "Would you like to do this? Why don't you do this mono act?" And wow, that was it. So I just started this mono act, and that was my first exposure to the stage in front of a live audience. All of them laughing at those punchlines, and that from there was no going back. I just followed that. I mean, I would do I was very young then, maybe about 8 or 9 when I started my first mono acting, and then it just took off from there. So for me, that kind of shaped it, because after that, I mean, I still do mono acting in class in
oh,
front of my
wow.
students.
You
Yeah.
must be quite a teacher, and I'm certain everybody look forward to having you in class. One of those rare teachers we'd love to have in our class and wait for them to come in.
Oh, yeah. I love this. I mean, I teach the senior classes, although my
Oh,
books are for the little ones, but
yeah.
I do have my fun moments with them as well.
How
Yeah.
lovely. So tell me, was there any piece of advice, maybe one piece of advice or a life lesson, or even a small gesture from a parent, teacher, or mentor that you carry with you today, and how did it influence your life?
Okay, one piece of advice. I would say that came from my mother. My mom, she was a homemaker. She is a homemaker, and she would tell me and my sister. We are just a year apart. She would tell us one of the most important, or perhaps the most important thing, is to be financially independent. You have to work. You just have to work. So I mean, of course, this is coming from, I'm talking about 50 years ago. when she would
Oh,
55 years ago, when she'd keep telling us this. So that kind of, she drilled it into our subconscious, so to speak. So that, I would say, influenced me and my sister. Both of us are educators. Both of us have been teaching for 34 years now. We both started in
wow.
1990, and there has been no going back. So independent, financial independence, I think that piece of advice really, that was something that we really took to the true spirit.
A pertinent piece of advice 50 years ago by your mother. I mean, what could be better than that? And that is really the key today, isn't it? How much that must have helped you already.
True.
And I'm certain that you're imparting that to your children and your students alike.
Absolutely.
Great. So tell me, imagine the atmosphere of your childhood home. Was it warm and nurturing or full of hustle and bustle? Were there any unspoken rules or rhythms that shaped your early years?
Warm and nurturing, definitely. Mine was it was a fun house. I would come back from school, and there my mother would be playing some music, and my father had holidays on Saturday, Friday, and Saturday. In Kuwait, it was like, it still is, Fridays and Saturdays, and it would be it was fun. We would have dance, we would have laughter, and of course, my father had a wicked sense of humor, which of course he incorporated in his in his mono acts. So it was just great. And then we lived in an apartment in a building where we had a wonderful community. So it was just lovely, wonderful atmosphere, and we are still friends with many of those people. Um,
How
in
lovely.
Yeah,
And those will remain forever. Your
they
childhood
will.
memories and friends remain forever. They are your best friends,
Absolutely,
certain.
they do. Yes.
Was there ever an important figure in your early life, could be a teacher, family member, or a friend who had a lasting influence in you?
Um, Many, in fact, my father, my mother, my sister. She's my best
Wow.
friend.
Wow.
As I said, we're just a year apart, and so they are the lasting. They have really, really, just being with them, their presence have made a very, very deep impact in my life. I would say my role model was also my grandmother. She was also a teacher, an educator.
Okay.
And yeah, and we're talking about, say, 60, 70 years ago, when she would walk miles to school, and just to put food on the table for her 8 children. And so yes, my father having come to Kuwait and then taking care of them. So these are those people who have really made that impression in my life.
And that seems like a really beautiful family. You have a sister, you have a grandmother that you've looked up to, and I'm
Yes,
certain that she's instilled values that you carry through even now, and you're imparting it forward to your children. So
absolutely.
that's a beautiful family to be, to be brought up in.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me
Being
now, and sorry, yes, go ahead.
And I was just going to say that in Kerala, being an educator is like, it's a big deal. I mean, everybody looks up to you, and they call you teacher. They don't call you by name. They just say teacher. So that's how it is in Kerala, even today, for that matter.
I understand that because my mother was an educator for 45 years. And the respect that she carries, I
Yeah,
think it's one of the, by far, the best professions that one could be in. And something that you carry throughout, I mean, something that you should be proud of. Being an educator and actually educating children and turning them out to be what they end up being, eventually in their life. I remember all my teachers, and some special ones because they've really created or influenced me in a very, very good way. So yeah, of
how
course,
lovely,
thanks to all
how
the
lovely,
educators that we have.
how lovely.
I must know this, though you mentioned mono acting and you mentioned how you've been brought up at home. There must have been a mischievous side to you, Preeti. So can you share a funny or a wild story from your childhood, and what was the most trouble that you got into? And did
So,
it teach you something important, even if it was indirectly?
so yes, I was a very naughty kid, very mischievous.
Really?
And I would write on the spot. I would write poems, limericks, on teachers and about them. So there's this one incident I remember. I was in grade 9, and I was in front, and this was a history teacher, and she was going on and on the drone, and all of us were listening. And then I just, something got into me, and I wrote a limerick right there in front of her. So it's that moment where, I mean, I could actually, I was so involved in it, I could have pretended that I am listening, but it was that moment when the a fine rhyme was just adding up. And she noticed that, and she said, "What are you doing?" And she read it. And I stood there absolutely mortified. But all she said was, okay, pay attention now. My goodness, that
Wow.
I learned such a lesson that day that I till date. I mean, this is the same thing. I'm an educator now, and when students are mischievous, I hear you. That's what I feel like telling them. I hear you, and it's fine. It's okay. It's good to have that little mischief in them. Otherwise, what is there? It's fun. So that lesson stayed with me. That she could have asked me to step out of the class or leave the class or say something, but she said nothing. And in her silence, she spoke volumes.
Wow.
So
And we normally say the naughtiest child is made the leader of the class. And here you're an educator. So I don't know. Were you also a monitor in class?
no, I was not a monitor, but I very often I would crack jokes and do the mono acting, have great imitations of teachers going around. Till date, whenever we have a reunion, they'll ask me to imitate my teachers. So,
Wow, how fantastic is that? And you must be really good at it. We can't leave this screen until we see a bit of what you can do
oh my
and
goodness.
your talent. But before that, no, I mean, after hearing so much of what you are, the talent pool that you are, I couldn't let you go like that. Apart from being an educator, a mono actor is something that we'd like to see. But before we do that, I wanted to know, so there have been obviously very interesting parts of your growing up. But was there any particular challenge or a struggle as a child that you faced, either socially, academically, or personally? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Hmm, well, there was one incident when after grade 10, it was,
Mhm.
so I would say I was around 14, 15. Yes. I went to, I mean, this was after the board examination, and our idea at that point, very long ago, so our idea of having fun or celebrating was to get together at a house and then all of us watch a movie. And of all the movies at that time it was newly released, we watched The Exorcist, The Exorcist of
Of course.
all the movies. And that, oh my goodness, that really traumatized me. That it was raw. It was very, I mean, in those days it was the best that they could do, but terribly done actually. But the whole spookiness of it, that really traumatized me, and that stayed with me for a long time. So much so that I was actually afraid of the dark, not being alone as much as I was afraid of the dark, and that went on for a very long time. And then I remember talking to my childhood friend who's here now. She is, I mean, we are in touch, all of us. There are 12 or 13 of us who are in touch still. And I remember going to her house and talking to her about it. She said, you need to address this and address it now. And it was just about 2 years ago when I went for some therapy, and then I actually got over this whole fear of the dark. So that stayed with me for a very long time. So they say it's so true. In your formative years or when you're very young, whatever you see, or it just stays with you. So it really has to be very positive in every way.
I agree with you, but it's strange that you called out Exorcist because that's the film that I watched, and whatever that movie may have been, but until date, just the thought of it gives me goosebumps. And you mentioned it, and I was like, oh my God, she had the same
Yeah.
experience. It was
Yes.
such a crazy film.
Crazy.
I
Yes.
recall that movie. I'll never forget. And then somebody immediately after we finished watching the movie knocked on our door, and my parents weren't at home. It was just my brother and me. You cannot even imagine the fear
Oh,
that we carried. It could
yes.
have been anybody. I don't know who it was,
Yeah.
but we went and hid, and we remained there till our parents got back because we were petrified.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, you're right. Positive impact is such an important
Very,
thing
very
during
true.
our growing years and our formative years. Um, I want to know then, therefore, what role did your family play in shaping your views? Could be on work, success, or relationships. Were there any family traditions, rituals, or expectations that made a lasting impact on you?
Okay, so with relationships, oh yes, we are as thick as thieves. My sister and
Yes.
I, very, very close. My mother and my sister and I, we talk to each other every day. We're a very tight knit family, and we've passed that on to our children as well.
Lovely.
Family holidays are extended. It's all extended, all about the extended families. Wherever we go as a family, we celebrate as a family. So all that, I learned a lot from both my mother and my father. When it comes to success, one of the things I always loved, and it was almost, it reached a state where I was obsessed by that thought. I loved traveling. I
Wow.
love to travel, and I would travel in my mind because, of course, we were in Kuwait. So traveling, of course, we would only come to India at that point. At maximum, we would go to Bahrain, which was just a desert at that point. But anyway, so that was about it. But after and that travel, that whole idea of travel stuck with me. I have traveled everywhere, all over the world, and that is for me, uh, all those experiences, it is priceless. Traveling around the world, traveling to all the forests around the world, traveling to these jungles around the world, just looking at people, looking at nature, that is one thing which has stuck with me. Just that, the travel bug. That is one. And my idea of success was, again, work. I wanted to work right at the beginning. That's because my mother kept drilling that in me.
Mhm.
So my success criteria was work and travel, both of which I can do now, because the nature of my work. And then, of course, I also got married to a naval officer in the defense, and by nature of that job, I just kept traveling all over India. So, every 2 years we were moving. And as a result of that, I taught in all these schools, army and navy schools, and many other schools. And so that really exposed me to children and to people and to cultures and traditions.
And that's so beautiful because whatever you manifested in your formative years actually came true, and you continue to do that, right? And enjoy it too. Do you still
Yes.
travel as much, Preeti, or is the
Yes,
travel?
yes. No, no, no. Very much. In fact, only increased.
Oh, lovely.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I was going to ask you, what did you think success looked like when you were growing up? But you said a lot about it already. So I've got the answer to that question, which I was very, very interested in. But what I'd want to know is, childhood isn't just about big moments, but also about absurdities. What is that something small and funny from your childhood that always makes you smile when you think back at it?
My sister and I would giggle a lot. It was all giggles or chuckles. It was
Oh,
just giggling and chuckling and looking at all the funny things in life. I think that's so important. We
yeah.
can't be serious and we can't take ourselves seriously. And that's the same principle that I have in class. I mean, when I teach the 12th, the standard, there, as it is bogged down with all the pressures of studies, at that point I'll say, come on, just okay, everyone just stop and just listen to the chirping of the tree, of the birds. And they look
Wow.
at me as if to say, are you for real, really, at this point in time? You've got to look at the, I mean, of course, that is a very beautiful moment. It's not funny at all listening to the chirping of the birds, but even otherwise, the absurd things like we call it the farash, the guy who comes to collect the garbage. He was called the farash. So, and his name was Ahmed. So we would say, okay, and we would learn, so we would try to make sentences in Hindi. Oh, Ahmad Man ko ye dena hai. And then we'd break into chuckles and laugh over such a silly thing. But to find that silliness in life is so important.
And I
And
hope you continue to do that because that's important. That's what keeps you looking the way you do.
uh, yeah,
And you're obviously very close to your sister, as you mentioned. So I'm
yes.
certain that nothing's changed. You may
Nothing
have
has
grown
changed.
in
We still
numbers, but
call each
not
other,
the mind.
and we still giggle over so many things. And in school is a perfect place to get howlers, to have all
Yeah.
these wonderful howlers, things that students say, things that teachers say. So it's it's good
How
fun.
lovely is that? How beautiful. And now that you're older, are there any aspects of your childhood that you would do differently as a parent or a teacher? Are there any lessons from your upbringing that you would pass on or maybe even avoid when raising children today?
Well, my children are grown up and they are working, but I do remember. I mean, my childhood was lovely. I mean, I don't have even quarter of the pressures, and I feel for the students nowadays, for the children nowadays, with the kind of pressures that they face, not just in academics, but also in their social life. The amount of pressure that they face. So, but mine was a very happy one. We cruised through school. there was no pressure as such, so that is a lesson that I imparted to my children when they were schooling. In fact, I taught both of them when they were in school. They were in the same school. So I would just say, it's very important to stay calm, to have me time. So important to have that me time, to just disconnect in order to connect. Just
Totally.
disconnect from everywhere, from everything. Um, if you need to disconnect, one of the prime things that we do in order to disconnect is to go to a forest reserve. All of us do that. The entire family. We book a place in Kabini, or we go to Ranthambore, or we go to Pench or Tadoba, or anywhere. Just go to a forest. It's it is so therapeutic, and that's what I tell my students, my children also nowadays. I mean, even the students. Just it's so important to disconnect in order to connect with yourself.
And beautifully stated and true, absolutely true. I think you need to take these breaks in life. Otherwise, the way we run on treadmills these days,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we've just completely lost track of what the fun angle of or
Yes.
aspect of life is really. Yes, our
Yeah.
childhood has been really, really beautiful. And tell me, so therefore, was there a teacher who inspired you to become one yourself? I know your parents and your family have inspired you, and they continue to. But is there a teacher who has? And if yes, then what was the most inspiring thing about her? And was it a childhood dream of yours to become an educator?
Okay, so the teacher who inspired me was an English teacher, and she was, in those days in Kuwait, and I'm sure in the Middle East and many other places, we only had Anglo Indians as our English teachers. Every other teachers, like the heavy duty subjects, the science and the maths, were all teachers from Kerala or
Mhm.
from Tamil Nadu. But the English teacher, she was from Goa, and her name was Miss Penelope.
Wow.
I don't know where she is now, but Miss Penelope. And oh my goodness, she was a feisty, very attractive, and full of beans, a person, and her personality was like she would just light up the class. The way she entered walked into the class, that itself hooked you. Hello, good morning. And
Wow.
I emulate that, subconsciously I've emulated that, because that cheer that you bring, when you come in, the tone itself, it sets the tone for the class. And so I would look at her,
Absolutely.
all of us would look at her and say, this, Miss Penelope, the way she dressed, only Anglo Indians would wear dresses those days. And the rest of the teachers would wear saris or some salwar suits and all that. But here she was so attractive and so full of life, and her English was crisp. That was it. She floored us.
I
So,
just
yes,
I
that was
just reeled your teacher into my head, and she must be something else because I can imagine what a happy class she must have created, the energy that she
yes.
got in. And looking at you and now listening into you, I'm sure that you do pretty much of the same thing. So was it a childhood dream to be
She
an
did leave a,
educator,
she
Preeti?
did leave an impact on us, Yeah. We used
Yeah,
to look forward to that. And that's what students should do every day. They should look forward to going to school. Yeah, I
totally.
mean, well, there are pressures, and academic pressure is really, really, it's not isolated. It's everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah.
But if you can find the funny side to everything, or the silliness, or not be afraid to voice your opinion and to create that safe space, that is so important. That's so
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. I agree with you. And in today's times, I think it's imperative because with the kind of pressures that the kids are dealing with,
Yeah.
if you have great educators who keep you happy and they have high energy levels and the energies are only positive, what could be better than that? I wanted to ask you, and I did actually, was it a childhood dream to be an educator? Did that teacher inspire you
But
to be one?
that was just one of those happy things. I wanted to travel, yes, and I wanted to work. But being an educator was no. Actually, I wanted to be in the theater. That's what I wanted to
Oh,
do. I wanted to be in the theater because, as I said, I was mono acting, and after that, I moved in college. I'd come down to Kerala for college. My college was in Kerala, in Cochin. And I was there in every drama, in every play, every time on stage, where there was something to do, whether it was acting or speaking or dancing or singing, I was there. So I wanted to join the theater. But, 38 years ago, joining the theater really is that even a career? That was unheard of. And so I And then I just, of course, I got married young. And then it was my father-in-law who said, why don't you do a teaching course, a B.Ed? And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And that was it. There was no turning back. That
Oh,
was it.
lovely. And I'm certain that this is something that your children in school must be thanking you for. Thank you for being the educator who we desire to see every day. There is so much in common between you and me. And as you speak, you spoke about theater, and I do theater. Theater is really my lifeline, apart from
Oh,
from the books business. But more importantly, traveling. Traveling is another piece that I enjoy. My English teacher inspired me the most,
how
and
is
there's
it?
so much that I learned from her. So while you were speaking, you were actually pretty much echoing my childhood and bringing forward what I've gone through, and a very happy, warm childhood, something that I could go back to and relive again, and I wish we could do that. But
Yeah, because when you're teaching, you can combine theatrics, in your teaching. You can, I mean,
absolutely.
there are times when I remember when I'm doing Shakespeare, there are times when I would pound my fist on the table, and there are students who've said, hey, take it easy, ma'am, take it easy.
Shakespeare again, my favorite, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
you
think
can
it's been
combine
quite an
everything
open.
in teaching.
Yes,
So it's fine.
yes. Great. So, if you had to choose one simple everyday moment from your first 12 years, Preeti,
Hmm.
that you feel truly captured the essence of your childhood, what would it be? And why is that moment significant? And how does it connect to the person that you are today?
One simple moment, everyday moment. I would say that, when I would come back from school every day at around, say, 2:33, it was a lovely moment. Open the door, there's something waiting for me. A little bit of food, a snack, a drink, energy drink, something. And
Wow.
a quick half an hour of 1 hour of check-in of homework. And then I would rush to my neighbor's home. Every day we would all meet and we would all have in exchange our day's gossip with my friends, my neighbors. I think that doing that every day, or going down, just walking around a little bit. Of course, there was no places walking, routes or anything of that sort, but just going down the building, doing a little bit of talking and all that, that has stayed with me. Because even now, when I come back, the first thing when my mom calls, first thing she asks is, have you had something to eat? Have you had something to drink?
How
So that
lovely.
that stays. And then connecting with my friends wherever I go, whichever part of the world I go to, I connect with my students, with my friends, with my colleagues, all the colleagues and friends and students that I have spoken to or taught over the past many, many years. Wherever I go, whichever part of the world, I'll find one Japanese girl in Japan. I'll find a Chilean in Chile. I'll find, something, everybody. And we meet. I think that everyday thing of going and connecting with my neighbors has stayed with me.
You're such a happy person, so full of energy in life, that I now know why you wrote the book that you wrote, even though you teach a higher grade.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that you're speaking about your childhood and what you enjoy and what you've always enjoyed, and you continue to follow a lot of it. So we're going to just deep dive into your beautiful book as well, which
Okay.
is pretty much for under 12, if I'm not wrong, called The
Yes.
Jungle's Whispers.
Yes.
And you've explored some absolutely pertinent and beautiful topics in that. How have your childhood experiences or memories shaped your decision to delve in these topics?
So, as I mentioned earlier, because I was in Kuwait and there was nothing over there except there were no wildlife, maybe
Mhm.
kites or hawks and the camel and the occasional camel and the sheep. But apart from that, so my highlight and my high point of the year was during the summer vacation coming to India. And we were living in a very dense villages surrounded by hills and a lot of greenery and foliage and all that. So going there for treks, my cousins would say, come on, let's go for treks. And and then doing all that, that really opened up this such a world of possibilities. For me, that was a magical world. Seeing these, hearing birds chirping, um, seeing the cows, the goats, everything. And we had, of course, a cow shed. And so my first, every day I
Wow.
would check in with the cows. We'd go there, we'd see, we'd give them hay. I'd actually talk to them. I talk to horses. I go to horse stables, and many of my students are, they equestrians. So I mean, the point is that I just love talking I love animals. I love forests and I love greenery. So that has helped me. I just felt these children of today's world, they are so immersed and so, in their own world, in their own bubble. They have
Right.
no idea of, I mean, look at India. It's so incredible. you've got
Well,
you've got lions and tigers and leopards and pumas, and you've got snow leopards to boot, and then you have elephants, and you have all kinds of animals and birds teeming with life. What are you doing looking into your phones, or looking into TVs or playing video games? Go out and explore the world. See what's happening. Look at the trees. Marvel at everything. This is what I wanted to bring to the children. And you got to catch them young, because the older students, they are jaded. Oh my God,
yeah.
they've got the weight of the whole world, and they're worried about a university. But it's the little ones, oh my God, the kind of questions they ask. So that was why my target audience was children. And
How lovely. It's a beautiful book, The Jungle, When the Jungle Whispers.
thank you.
Brilliant book. So tell me, how does the book highlight the diversity of India's wildlife and ecosystems, Preeti?
uh, so we have a whole lot of wildlife. Every state is teeming with it. Every state in India. That's the beauty of India. You go to Kashmir, you'll find animals there. You'll go to in the jungles. The story of the Hangul is from Kashmir. You go to Kerala, it's the Western Ghats. You go to any of the Western Ghats in any of the um, states, it's full of life. So every state has it. And so that is the beauty. I want children from every state. So Kanna and Molu are just representatives of children from all over. Kanna and Molu represents any Munna and Chunnu and Chunmun and every whatever, what have you. They represent all the little children all over India and all over the world. And they, they all love grandma. They love their grandparents, and their grandparents tell them these stories. They can connect with that. They resonate with that, and you just have to open that door just a little bit to allow them to enter into that magical world. They need to know this. They need to connect with nature. That's really important.
I
Uh,
completely, I completely agree with you, and I couldn't agree with you more than what you're saying. Absolutely. Do you have your book with you before I ask you the last question, Preeti?
yes, it's. Can I
Please
go
hold
get
it
it?
up. I didn't have a copy, so I can't. But I could you show it to everybody, the audience? It's a
Oh,
beautiful
okay.
book.
I'll
Must
just,
get
I'll
it.
just go get it. One moment, please.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The book's called When the Jungle Whisper. It's about India's wildlife and ecosystems, and you must read the story. It's a simple, sweet story about two children and their love for nature and wildlife.
So here's the
Yes,
book.
that's the book. Great. Thank you. And my last question to you, how do you think the book might change the way children see the natural world around them?
My fervent hope is that children, when they go to when they go anywhere to the jungles or to their grandma, let's say they go to their villages. Most of us, all of us, it's not that we have lived in cities all of a sudden. We all come from some state, some happy village, small little town, if not a village, a town. So in through my book, I hope to tell the children that there is a wealth of natural resources over there, where they can really appreciate not just the materialistic things, but the natural beautiful things that is available in India. Go out there and just enjoy, immerse yourself, and you'll come out feeling so fresh, so beautiful. I would like to see children, because I keep telling them whenever I go to schools and talk about the book, I keep telling them, look at the wonderful work that our conservationists are doing. Why do they need to do that? I mean, they might as well just join the bandwagon and live in the city. But the way they work, the conservationists or the environmentalists, when a tree is being cut down, I feel miserable. And I've been living in Bangalore for 20 years. This was a green space with lots and lots of trees. But today, the lung space is reducing, it's shrinking. And it shouldn't be like that. So children are the last hope. When they grow up, they can do something about this. that something that we couldn't do, or they can carry forward the good work that the environmentalists are doing or the conservationists are doing. So they need to know that, and we have to start from the school, from when they are very young. And one of the things that I always tell them is, when we're taking pictures, I say, don't say cheese, say trees. Trees. It
Wow.
has the same effect. You're going to smile anyway.
I'm
Say
going to
trees.
share that. That. Great. Thank you, Preeti. It's such a pleasure talking to you and to be in conversation with you. This book really is, you can hold it up again if you'd like,
Yes.
is really beautiful. I'd love that everybody reads it more from the perspective, and not
Yeah.
only children, I think even the adults should read it. There's so much that you've covered here
Absolutely.
about the ecosystem
Absolutely.
and the wildlife and the kind of research and work you've done on this. You'll have to hold it
And
up. We can't see.
the other thing I want to tell you is, what I really enjoyed and what I always imagine what the children do is they look at the illustrations too. So the
Yes,
illustrations really give life to the stories. And so I
totally.
firmly believe that, I mean, a storybook without illustrations, no, you must have it, because I imagine children reading it and then looking at the pictures wide eyed. And then in their heads, they're imagining that scene in their heads, and then they're trying to kind of match it and say, oh, this is so beautiful. That's the effect. Children must look at it wide eyed at the book, and they have to pause, because just reading it and trying to finish it, no, I want the children to pause and let it
To
sink
soak the
in.
book in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
that's
correct.
that's the whole effect.
We can't let you go till you give us a bit. We don't have time, actually. I'm exceeding that time. I hope they don't cut us off on
Oh my
this.
God.
But mono acting is something that we have to see. So you have a couple of
Okay,
seconds. Do whatever you'd like, but
okay.
we have to see this before we say goodbyes.
All right, all right. So anyways, let me tell you something that happened in my school.
Mhm.
So I was going to the cafeteria with my friend, and we have to pass the primary section to go to the cafeteria. So I was taking a walk and going there, and this little, he must have been just 5 years old, 5 or 6 maximum. And then he just came, such a happy kid. He came skipping, and then he looked at me for some time from a distance, and he was not looking at my friend, he was looking at me. And then he came towards me, and I just knelt down. I just knelt and said, hi. So he looks at me and he says, why do you have so many circles on your head? And I went, oh. So I said, oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. So many circles, huh?
Circles. Oh, how
Yeah.
lovely. And only a child can, as innocent as that, can
Only
do
a
that.
child will come up with that. Beautiful
And now that
question.
you mentioned circles, there are a lot of beautiful circles on your head.
Why do you have so many
Lovely.
circles?
Lovely speaking with you, Preeti. Thank you very much for your time and
Thank
best
you for
wishes with
having
your
me.
book. It's a
Thank you.
fantastic one. I urge everybody to get this book, and your childhood stories are absolutely fascinating. Thank you. Keep smiling and
Thank you.
always be happy.
Thank you, Shivani. Lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.